What's up, guys? Welcome into a Week 14 edition of Chargers Weekly. Alongside Matt Money Smith, I'm Chris Hayre. Chargers 7-5 money, and I'm looking at the standings. I'm looking at how the rest of this schedule shakes out, man. That was a massive win against the Bengals.
You know, one thing that they seemingly have done all season long, right, is after a disappointing loss is they get you that win that maybe you had circled as a loss, right? It's like, you know what, we got the Broncos one here with their struggles is the win, and the Bengals, that's going to be tough. They're playing really good football as the loss, and they just swapped them. Happened with the Cowboys and the Chiefs, and I think, you know, that's one thing this team's been really good about doing, and you can either flip it positive or negative, right? They're not able to sustain success since their 4-1 start. They've been alternating, or you can say, well, they're able to rebound from losses. So however you want to frame it, at least they're able to do that, and they're not stringing these losses together either. It'd be nice to string some wins, and it's certainly set up that way this week. But to get out to Cincinnati, it's certainly, and I know you saw it too, Chris, it just, the team felt different, felt it in the meal, you know, in the meal room before the game that morning, felt it on the bus ride over, felt it on the pregame. It just, I don't know, the team just had a different vibe about it. It's December. These games are meaningful. You got a shot to not only get in the tournament, but the AFC is wide open to win the damn thing and go to the Super Bowl. And it just felt like, I don't know, there's just a sense of urgency that I felt like was there. I'm not saying it wasn't there for any of the other games. I don't know. I felt it a little bit more in this contest.
Yeah, I did too. And we're sitting here. It's December 9th. They're 7-5 with 5 games to go. And hopefully they're peaking at the right time. And we'll find out over the next couple of games, especially. But you're right. I mean, to outscore the Bengals in the first and the fourth quarters, 33-0. And I know it got interesting in the middle.
Always does,
right? But to get out in front 24-0, like you said, they came in with a purpose. And when it did get interesting, guess what? They finished, and they finished very strong. And you look at the standings, Money, you lose that game with the Steelers win. I don't think the Chargers are in the playoffs if we're talking today. I think they're out, right?
They are, yeah. They'd be outside looking in.
Yeah, so right now, you're the 5th seed. You'd play Kansas City at Arrowhead if the season ended today. But if you beat the Giants, you got a game for first place in the division on Thursday Night Football, right? So I don't think it gets much better than this. Obviously, you know, there's some situations on offense where, you know, as we're taping this, we're not sure exactly if Keenan and Mike are going to be on the field on Sunday. We hope they will be. But I look at this defense. I think the defense money is peaking at the right time. 6 sacks, 10 quarterback hits, 4 forced turnovers. We had not seen them really force many turnovers the last 5 weeks. And I think that was a big part of what Brandon Staley wanted to do and how he wants this defense to be identified. And they certainly did that.
Yeah. You know, a couple things, you know, kind of to pick up on there. And I guess I'll just start with what you just mentioned. Look, they forced fumbles. They've had bad fumble luck. So, you know, it was bound to, you know, pardon the pun, bounce their way. You know, because it did early in the season. And then for whatever reason, they're getting these balls to squirt out. They just, you know, heck, they're squirting for first downs against Denver, or, you know, that, which I still don't understand. They called it an incomplete pass for Teddy instead of what should have been a sack fumble recovered by Kaiser, and it wasn't. So I think it was bound to even out, you know, and look, they've been dropping interceptions too. You know, that's the other thing is they've put themselves in place, but the defensive backs or whomever just haven't been able to secure the ball. And they were able to do that in this one. The one thing, I think it was a huge game to put them in a position to have these last 5, you know, they're in charge of it. They have the ability to win out and end up as the number 2 seed or the number 3 seed in the AFC and claim the division crown and take it away from Kansas City. It's set up for them to do that. And I think they're playing, you know, well enough to be able to do it. But I think in that game, you know, I thought there was a big game moment in that game. And it was, you go up 24-0. Now it's 24-22. And you've got a 12-man on the field penalty that has given the Bengals a 2-point conversion from the 1. And they hand it to not just one of the best backs, but one of the strongest backs in the NFL. Joe Mixon, 6'1", 230. And we know how embattled this run defense has been. And I even said it before the play to DJ. I said, look, silver lining, I know this thing's going sideways, but I just got this feeling if you stone them here and you don't let them tie this game and you still have the lead, you can say, hey, look, things got sideways, but we're still leading this game. And I think there's something to be said about having that as you run off the field, stopping a team from the one. And I just thought it was such a huge play to stick Mixon there in the hole and not let him get in. And then you just saw this defense really take off from there. I mean, it was after that a lot of those sacks came. The Derwin Adderley, as they team up on one, the fumble, which was a gift from Mixon, but still, I think it was a product of how much contact he had received all game. So that may be when we look back on this, if they continue here and can build some momentum here against a Giants team that's severely undermanned, that may be a play we look back on and go, you know what, that might have been it right there in that moment, as embattled as they've been when it comes to a run D and what people are saying about them, to hold them there and to maintain that lead and then just pick up the next 17 points and get out of there with a dominating win.
Man, it's a great point. And Mixon, 19 for 54, 2.8 a carry. And it's a product. Hey, when you go up 24-0, it's going to help your run defense. And I think that the narrative of this 32nd, 31st run defense, it's flipping a little bit, right? Like we were talking about how bad the Chiefs were on defense at the beginning of the year, and look at what they've done, right? It's an 18-game or 17-game season, 18-week season, and I feel like that's starting to shift a little bit. I think they're playing the run a little bit better. And you said it, like, let's give Tavon Campbell a little bit of credit. I know he's been in some tough spots this year, filling in for guys. And I go back to week 3 when he forced 2 fumbles against the Chiefs. They don't win that game without those 2 forced fumbles. And I know it was a bit of a gift, but he picked it up and went the other way, and they got 6 out of it. So I give Campbell some credit there too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there have still been coverage issues. There were in that game, and Tavon isn't alone in that. To me, the back end is dramatically different without Asante out there. He has been so good this season and by far their most reliable cover corner. So, I thought Coach Staley addressed it a little bit earlier this week, saying that, the system and the scheme that Mike Davis came from is considerably different than what we're asking him to do. And he's still trying to catch up and get comfortable and figure that out. And I think the same goes with Camp. I mean, look, Campbell was someone we were discussing with the 53rd spot. So now that you're asking him to go up against, a level of competition that we did not anticipate, we figured he'd be a special teams player, a depth piece. And instead he's been a starter, for 3 or 4 games. And look, they're picking on him and they're still giving up a lot of third downs. But I think just to kind of speak to your point, look, you've got to figure that out. Every team does. Every team is dealing with attrition in week 14. And so I think the one thing that is encouraging is how good the safeties have been in Adderley when he's out there. And obviously Derwin is playing like the best safety and maybe the best defensive player in the game right now.
Really is.
That helps. The linebackers have been exceptional. Tranquil and White, they have been exceptional. And I think you're starting to see, and Coach Staley even discussed this, that front is starting to figure it out. They're starting to get more comfortable with gap and a half. Since their bye week, just look at their run defense. It's not the same. It's a completely different defense. They have been much better against Dalvin Cook, against Joe Mixon, against some of the best runners in the league. I think a lot of it's skewed from Jalen Hurts just kind of breaking out when he's intending to pass and extending those plays. The Broncos game was not good for them. I absolutely acknowledge that the Broncos got after him, but I think they've done enough since the bye to make you feel pretty good about it being at least average, at least league average, mid-pack, and maybe even better, after what they were able to do against Mixon. And I think a lot of that too, personnel. They're rotating guys like Gaziano and Fehoko out there, and they're making plays. And I think they're kicking Joey inside a little bit more, as opposed to having playing wide edge. He's kind of moving up and down that line. I think that's helped a lot. And there's no doubt Chenna has been just fantastic these last few weeks.
Chenna was awesome on Sunday. And, we mentioned the 6 sacks. I think it's the first time a Chargers defense has gotten 6 sacks since the 2016 season. And they did it for a majority of the game without Joey Bosa.
Is that right? I was thinking back. I thought it might have been after that. Did they end up with just 5 against Peterman in the?
They must have,
because I know there were 5 interceptions, I think, but I thought there might have been. You know what? You're right. It was probably. I can't imagine it was 6.
Our good friends at Chargers Communications said 2016 season.
There we go. We'll take it. They know better than me.
But the fact that Joey was out though, money for a majority of that
9
game,
snaps,
and what Uchenna did, and Stanley was asked that, I think it was on Wednesday, he was asked about, hey, is it hard, when you're getting guys back like Linval and Asante to put them in the lineup and take other guys out? He's like, no, it's not
Not at all.
It's actually fine. And it speaks to your point about, hey, we're giving these guys who are rotational players, quality reps that if they do have to come back in December and January, they're somewhat more prepared.
I do think there's a flip side of that though, Chris. I think what we've learned is that he's trying to figure out the best role for Kenneth Murray. And I think he's quickly discovered that, for whatever reason, and this is nothing against what Kenneth is able to do on the field, but there's just a special combo there with Tranquill and White. They play really, really well together. And sometimes that just predicates who gets the snaps and who doesn't, and how those two players fit into that puzzle. I think what we've also seen too is, look, Jerry Tillery, we know, can get after a quarterback and he can get upfield, but he struggled to slow down the run. And I think he's recognized, okay, we can now maybe pull his snap count down a little bit, rotate guys like Gaziano, Fehoko in there, and we can be a better defense. So I do think, you want Linval back and you want Tillery out there and you want to have Kenneth Murray healthy. But I think what it's also done is it's allowed him as a first-year head coach and coordinator of that defense to say, oh, you know what, this combo works better, so we're going to ride this out. And sometimes, you're forced into that, based on injuries. And I think I think especially in the linebacking level, I think we've really seen that. I mean, I'm putting Tranquill and Kaiser up against almost any two linebackers in the league with the way they play together. They are so good out there at the same time.
Yeah, let's talk about Kaiser for a second, because our guys, Brock and Danny in Chargers Communications, had another great one. Derwin has 100 tackles, right? Kaiser is 4 away from 100 tackles. The last combination to do that was Junior Seau and Rodney Harrison. And there's 5 games to go, man. I mean, I realize there's an extra game, but there's 5 games to go here. The way Kaiser has played, like you said, with Drew, and the fact that Kenneth is almost moving to edge at times, I mean, it just speaks to how good those guys are together. But the way Derwin has played with Nas, and Coach Taylor was asked about Nas yesterday, and he just basically said, listen, Nas has a long ways to go, but Nas is a player. And I think we sometimes forget too, Bunny, like they're 7-5 right now. It's the first year of this program. This is the first year of this defensive system being implemented, and these coaches teaching these players how they want to play defense. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that in December and January. They're getting better defensively. And this is going to be a process. Coach Staley's not leaving after the 2021 season, right? I mean, he's trying to build something here, not just for this season, but beyond.
Yeah, I think, you hear it. You hear it so much, it's almost a cliche. I mean, it may be a cliche. It's not the best team that wins the Super Bowl. It's typically the hottest team.
Yep.
Because the margins are so slim in the NFL. Every team is stacked with really good players. And that's why most of the games, are one possession games. So typically, which, like the Bucs last year, like the Giants, when they won their 2, they both wild cards, like it just ends up being the team that hits its stride or finds its peak when the postseason starts. So I do think it's encouraging that neither side has really regressed. I guess you could say the offense has regressed a little bit from those first 5 weeks when they were so explosive. And that's a lot of it's due to attrition. But you still feel like, I can still see the offense being able to put it out there when they need to. And we just saw it in Cincinnati, after a disappointing outing against the Broncos, they're able to bounce back and put up 41 points. Well, I guess technically 34, since 7 of them were scored by the defense. But as far as the defense goes, I think they have enough players and they have them at each level, right? They've got Joey on the line. They've got Kaiser and Tranquill at the linebacker level, and they got Derwin at the safety level. Elite players. And I do think that when you combine those two, Tranquill, man, he had that sack. Nobody times up blitz better than that guy. He has got this innate ability to know when that ball is going to be snapped and you have no chance. He hits that gap precisely. I think one of the things Kaiser has done, remember, this guy was a safety when Tom Telesco drafted him, and they were like, hey, we want you to put on some weight and kind of start buzzing around at linebacker, because that's where this league is going. We need faster guys and more athletes at that level with these tight ends and how teams are attacking that level of the field now. And to his credit, he didn't just put the weight on. He's starting to thump. Like Kaiser is starting to bring wood out there. So
big at camp. He was really big at camp too. Yeah, you saw it noticeably in July. The Giants, we'll talk about the Giants. Chris Canty is going to come on, a former Giant who actually did win the Super Bowl as a wild card with the New York Giants beating the Patriots. So, we'll talk football, NFL in general with him, but also Giants. You mentioned it. It's an undermanned team. I want to see the Chargers run the football on Sunday, Money. And I realize that this is kind of who they are right now, that they're not necessarily a running team. Austin had 14 rushes, Justin Jackson 6 for 15. They really haven't identified that second running back position, but I think at some point in January, you don't know where you're going to be, and you may need to run the football. And I think this would be a good opportunity to maybe try to run the rock against the Giants.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to expose, Justin to Leonard Williams too much. Such a big, strong guy. And that's something that you do not want to see him hitting Herbert repeatedly because they're dropping back. But look, Justin's thrown the ball 30 times plus every single game. To some degree, it's the identity of this offense. You'd love to see it more balanced. And I was just talking with the Giants radio broadcast, and as I was answering the question that Paul and Lance asked about Eckler, and if it's no Keenan or Mike, you would just assume more is going to be put on his plate. And I said, I think the one thing to remember about Eckler is the guy never goes down on first contact ever. So you got to remember, like when he's out there, that dude is taking shots every single time he touches the ball, and he's not taking one, he's taking 3 and 4 because he refuses to go down. So he's taking that initial pop, and then he's probably taking a second and a third. So like, that's why I think you've heard even Austin talk about it. Certainly no one's ever going to question that guy's toughness, but that's just his style, man. The guy never goes down on first contact. So it's almost like you look at his numbers, it's 14 and however 7 targets, but man, you got to have a 50% multiplier in there because of how many hits he takes in every game. It's just different than a lot of other backs who are taking a carry, get stoned in the hole and go down. That's not the way Austin operates. So they got to find it. It's just like, it's got to have it time. It's either Justin or Larry or Josh or whomever it may be. But I think, and look, it's been Herbert more, and that's not typically what you want, but I agree with you. They got to find it. It's just unfortunate they have not been able to find it this year.
I think Austin's going to be extra motivated too. You don't see him put the ball on the ground as many times as he did on Sunday too. So, they won, but Austin's going to be hungry to redeem himself. And hey, he's having a special season, man. 15 total touchdowns. This is what this guy's capable of. And I think it's a great point. I mean, the dude does not go down on first contact. He had 14 carries. How many catches did he have on Sunday? He had 5 catches. So
5. I think 6 targets, 5,
touching the ball 19 times. And he really has had to carry this run offense. I think he wasn't expecting to maybe have as big of a load this year. He's always talked about being very comfortable with who he is and knowing that, hey, he can't carry the full load. And they just haven't been able to find that second guy yet. So it would be nice, especially with the uncertainty at the wide receiver position as we tape this, if they can really try to find something in the running game. And then, as far as the Giants go at the quarterback position, it sounds like it's going to be Mike Glennon. Jake Fromm is on deck, and they're getting him ready if he needs to be the guy. Likely no Daniel Jones. It's a game you have to win, and I know it's easy. It's easy for us to look 4 days later and see the Kansas City Chiefs rolling into SoFi Stadium, but this Chargers team cannot look ahead. You got to take care of the Giants and get to 8-5.
Look, they've been good defensively.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling up the numbers. They've allowed 27, 30 to the Bucks, but then you allow 16 to the Raiders, 20 to the Chiefs, 3 to the Panthers. Like that, it's a good defense.
Yeah.
So, defensively they can get after you. And if a defense can keep you in the game, you certainly know anything's possible. Like I said, they're NFL players. If their receiving core is healthy, which it hasn't been this year, but I mean, that's a good complement of weapons. Tony's been great when he's been healthy out there. He's a nightmare to bring down with how fast and how good he is at misdirection. Kenny Golladay, we know he's a number 1 receiver in this league. Slayton, it's a good complement of weapons. The O-line's been terrible. but it's getting a little bit better. So, I mean, I feel good about, like you said, this is a matchup that the Chargers ought to dominate. Like this is one where you want to say, hey, come on, let's see it. Yeah. Let's see a 2+ touchdown win and show that you can outclass a team that's down to a backup quarterback that wasn't expected to play, and perhaps even a guy that was just signed off a practice squad and showed up in the big town a week ago. Like if it's Fromm out there, they really need to make a statement and kind of show themselves like the Colts did last week on the outside looking into that playoff picture. They're like, hey, here's a 31-0 burger on the Texans. Yeah. You don't want to mess with us. We dominate bad teams, and we're in every game against a good team. And I think this is an opportunity for them to do that, especially with all the stuff that's flying around that market. You know, when it goes bad in New York, it's compounded with the media, and Gettleman's out, and is Judge going to be out, and what's going on with Tucson, buddy.
They're in Tucson right now. They're staying away from it.
Exactly. They're trying to get the heck away from it. So you got to take advantage of that when it shows up.
And frankly, the Chargers really haven't played a bad team this year. I mean, if you look at their schedule, I mean, they haven't played a team that hasn't been in playoff contention, unless I'm missing somebody. The Eagles, maybe.
No, I think you're right. Every single team on their schedule is currently either in the playoffs or maybe back one game. I think the Raiders are back a game. The Browns are back a game. The Eagles are back one game. The Vikings are back one game. Yeah. And the rest of them are and the Denver Broncos are back a game. Otherwise,
and the Washington football team's in the playoffs.
That's what I mean.
Now. You know, it's actually interesting how the schedule shook out. I mean, you play a lot of premium teams in the league, and now you're set up, man. Like we said at the beginning, you are set up to beat the Giants and to have a showdown with the Kansas City Chiefs that could decide the division on Thursday Night Football. So, all right, Mighty, let's bring in Chris Canty to get this week's opposing view and also talk some general Chargers and NFL stuff. But first, a quick note to let you know that Pepsi, they're handing out the ultimate Chargers fan experience only at 7-Eleven. Rush in and scan the code for your chance to win some awesome Chargers prizes. Bolt up with Pepsi. No purchase necessary. Must be 18 years or older. Sponsor is PepsiCo. For official rules, visit boltupla.com/7-Eleven. Also want to introduce you guys to Picks for Popeyes. Check this out. Every Chargers game this season, when the Bolts defense gets an interception, show your game recap email to your local Popeyes to get a free chicken sandwich when you purchase a chicken sandwich at regular menu price. All right, to get this week's opposing view, let's bring him in. Former Giant, ESPN's Canty and Golick Jr., Chris Canty. How are you, first and foremost, man? And we're excited to see the Giants in LA. They're in Arizona right now. They're nowhere near you guys.
Yeah, and I don't understand why Joe Judge decided to take this strategy, because it's typically not a situation where you would fly from an East Coast game out to a West Coast game to stay the week. Like, it's usually back-to-back West Coast games. And so this is an interesting strategy that he's trying to employ, and I'm curious to see how the team responds when they play the Chargers on Sunday.
How loud is it out there, Chris? How much heat is there? Is this him trying to pull them out of New York with everything that seems to be swirling around this team right now, and nobody's happy?
Well, I think there is an element of that just have the guys on the road, the opportunity to bond without the distraction of family and friends here locally. You get to put them in a bubble, and essentially the Giants are at a position in their season where they've got to circle the wagons. There's already a lot of controversy swirling around the organization. We know that they're going to push Dave Gettleman, their general manager, out the door at the end of the season. The question becomes whether or not Joe Judge can show enough over the course of the final 5 games to earn the opportunity to be the head coach in 2022, even though they're going to go through a general manager search. So I think that's the part that Giants fans are curious to watch play out. I would say that if you're going to hire another general manager, you should probably move in the direction of giving that person the autonomy to go through his own coaching search. And if he lands on Joe Judge being the best available option, then fine. But don't saddle him with an incumbent head coach that hasn't proven that he could actually do the job.
You know, Chris, this Chargers team, 7-5, coming off a big win against the Bengals, and the Giants obviously come to town undermanned. How do you even evaluate this Giants team without Daniel Jones and knowing that Mike Glennon will likely be the starter at this point of the year?
Well, I think the Giants defensively have shown the ability to take the football away. I mean, they had a streak snap last week, but it was 8 straight games with at least one interception. And so that's something that they've been able to rely on, being able to take the football away. Right now, they're top 10 in takeaways. They've got 19 on the season. So I think that part of their identity is still intact going back to last year. But outside of that, there really isn't anything that this Giants team does well. They've struggled to find an identity this season. And I think that's in part what led to the departure of offensive coordinator Jason Garrett 2 games ago. So if you're asking me, what's the state of New York Giants football, I would say they're in flux. They don't have an identity. They don't have clear veteran leadership in that locker room. And right now, I don't think that they have stable footing when it comes to the most important position in all of team sports, which is the quarterback spot, whether it's Daniel Jones, Mike Glennon, or Jake Fromm.
Should they be better, Chris? I mean, you said it. Look, the defense and Coach Graham, they've done a great job these last couple of years. It looks like they got a lot of talent on that side. When you look at the offense, is this a team that should be able to put up enough points to support that other side of the ball and win some games?
Well, they've invested a lot of resources on that side of the ball this offseason, and that led to co-owner John Mara saying that he had expectations that this team would be in the playoff hunt once we got to the month of December. And the reality is that they haven't played meaningful football on the other side of Thanksgiving in quite some time. And that's continued this year. And they're on the verge of having their 5th consecutive double-digit loss season. So should they be better? Yeah. I mean, they went out and they paid Kenny Golladay big money. They drafted Kadarius Toney with a first-round pick. They signed Kyle Rudolph, a veteran tight end. They've invested significant resources on the offensive side of the ball, not to mention getting back Saquon Barkley healthy this year. And that just has not translated to the type of success that they were expecting to have. And then inversely, on the defensive side of the ball, they've had a little bit of a drop-off in terms of their consistency with their front seven. If you want to put that on the absence of Blake Martinez, I can understand that. But still, there's a big drop-off from where this unit was a year ago when they were a top 10 group. So all in all, I think you have to characterize this Giants season as a failure based on where it looks like this team is headed.
Chris, we were just talking, Money brought up a great point about usually, a team that wins a Super Bowl, it's the hottest team. It may not necessarily be the best team. And I go back to your Giants team when you guys got hot and you beat the Patriots. The Chargers are 7-5 right now, and they have the Giants. They got a big game against the Chiefs, and they seem to be peaking at the right time. At what point in your career with the Giants, that Super Bowl season, did you realize that you guys could get on a roll and potentially win the thing?
Well, we started off that season 6-2, and we beat the Patriots in Foxborough for that 6th win. So we knew that we could compete with anybody.
Yeah.
Because that was a team that ended up representing that conference in the Super Bowl. So the fact that we went into their building and got the dub, like that proved to us how good we could be at the top end when we were all playing at our best. But we went through a midseason swoon where we ended up losing 4 consecutive games. And I think it was at that point where collectively we had to make a decision as a team what we wanted to be. And in that moment, we decided to go all in. And the turning point for that season was that Christmas Eve game against the New York Jets, where it was essentially a playoff elimination game. Whoever lost was out of playoff contention, and whoever won lived to fight another day in week 17. And so we ended up winning the last 2 games, game against the Jets and then the game against the game against the Cowboys in Giant Stadium, which ended up being the last regular season game because it got flexed to Sunday Night Football. And once we got into the tournament, we felt like we had enough to be able to get it done. A lot of the core pieces from the 2007 Super Bowl team were still there. So those guys understood what it took in order to be able to win in the playoffs. And so we were able to ride that momentum. But when I look at the Chargers, it's a lot of inconsistency, man. They've fallen into this pattern since week 5 of win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And that's just not where you want to be, especially when you're in the month of December. You want to be trying to find a way to play your best football. And so I think this represents a tremendous opportunity to stack some wins. But looking on the horizon for them, they're going to have a big test December 16th against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that will tell the tale in terms of what we can expect for this Chargers team down the stretch and whether or not they're going to be a part of the playoff picture in the AFC.
Yeah, Chris, and look, you see, for those that are watching on Zoom, you can see behind him. You do it for a national show, so you're watching everything, you're paying attention to everything. Certainly, the Chargers don't know, how much you've been able to invest in them because they haven't really raised their hand as an elite team yet. But going back to what you said about the Patriots, this is a team that lost a tough one to the Cowboys, went to Kansas City, forced four turnovers, and got that win over the Chiefs. In your experience, could that win on Thursday night? Is that something that you could see? Does this team, in your opinion, have enough talent? Like, hey, we swept the Chiefs. We slayed that beast. They've been back-to-back Super Bowls. Is that something that you think could push this team to the elite of the AFC? Do you think they have enough talent on the Chargers?
I think the Chargers have the talent. The question that I would have is what's going on up front with their offensive line, because we've seen a little bit of slippage in play with that group in comparison to what we saw in the first half. So that part of it, I want to see more from, and I need to see more consistency from Justin Herbert. He made some plays in the game last week, and that was impressive. But at the same time, I think they had some drives in the middle quarters that allowed the Cincinnati Bengals to climb back into that game. I mean, you're talking about a 24-0 lead that they had, and then had it not been for a Joe Mixon fumble that led to points from the defensive side of the ball, you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals potentially taking the lead because they had marched the ball into plus territory. Yeah. So the turnovers, the 3 consecutive turnovers on the drives at the end of the second quarter and early in the third quarter cracked the door open for Cincinnati. And that's not something that you want to see from a team that has the talent to make a deep run in the postseason. So I think there has to be a different level of urgency. And I would look to the offensive side of the ball to lead the charge with the Chargers, no pun intended, because I think based on the roster composition, that's the side of the ball that has to be their identity in order for them to have high-level success.
And Chris, the Chargers defense has been playing better. Did you play with Linval, right? Did you play with Linval?
Yeah. I played with Linval Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we identify some of these guys who have, playoff experience, Super Bowl experience.
Championship pedigree. Yep.
Championship pedigree. Linval's coming back into the lineup. And, Money and I were just talking about Derwin James probably playing the best of any safety in the league right now. Coming off an injury, already has 100 tackles. He's all over the place. Do you think that they have enough defensively? We're seeing the narrative of them not being able to stop the run kind of start to slowly shift the way that they've kind of bottled up Mixon last week and Dalvin Cook and Najee Harris in previous weeks. Do you think they have enough defensively to make a run?
Yeah, to that I would say I'm not sure that they bottled up Joe Mixon as much as the score dictated that the Bengals had to get away from it. I would look at it that way.
Helps, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then I would look at the Pittsburgh game and say to that, their offensive line has been suspect when it comes to run block win percentage all season long. So I don't know that they've fixed those woes in terms of being able to slow down the run. I don't trust that. And that's why I go back to the offensive side of the ball. Justin Herbert and that unit being able to dictate the complexion of the game is important because that helps the defense make the opposing offense one-dimensional. So that's what I would look for more so down the stretch, like that offense being able to get out to fast starts, being able to mount double-digit leads. And by virtue of the score, that talks the opposing team out of being able to exploit what has been one of the biggest deficiencies that the Chargers defense has shown all season long. So that's kind of how I would view that. Do they have enough to be able to get it done on defense? Absolutely, because you can rush the quarterback. And I like the guys that they have on the back end to be able to cover. Now, I know there are some concerns with some personnel with some COVID things on both sides of the ball. So we have to see how that plays itself out. But I still think the Chargers have enough to beat the New York Football Giants coming in there this weekend. That's for
making the Who's proud. Our man Chris Canty. Last thing
Hello.
For me, exactly. Let's go. Get that swashbuckling going. Last thing from me, Chris. And this is on the radio show front. I have this vision of Mike Golick Jr. showing up for work every day in the pre-show meeting with a dozen donuts every day and saying, "Hey guys, I brought some donuts for you." And everybody "No, we don't need to eat donuts at this time of the day, Mike." And then him just going, "Okay, well then I guess I'll just eat them all." And I envision that's the way he approaches any given day of work.
No, so you got it right that we have somebody on the team that shows up with sweets more often than not, but it's not Mike Golick Jr. It's our update anchor, Christine Lisi,
Is that right?
who does the Sports Center. She's a huge Buffalo Bills fan. And so when her Bills are coming off of a win, she always brings a tray in of sweets for everybody that's in the studio on the show. And so, of course, we didn't get that this week because they got thumped on Monday night by the New England Patriots. But anytime they win, she's bringing in sweets for the entire team. But when they don't win, when they catch the fade, Christine Lisi is definitely in the mood, and you can tell by the tone of her updates.
See, there we go. She's smart. She's made all of you Bills fans. It's very good thinking for Christine.
Exactly.
Christine knows it's Tom Brady on Sunday, right? So you may not be getting sweets this weekend either.
Exactly. I mean, listen, usually when you get beat by the New England Patriots, you don't have to worry about dealing with Tom Brady anymore. But this year's a little bit different because he plays for the Bucs.
That's a tough go. That's a tough back-to-back.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
hey, Chris, I know you got to get on the air, man. I can't thank you enough for your time. Shed a little light on the Giants, talking a little Chargers with us. Really appreciate it, man, and hope to catch up with you down the line.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. Enjoy the ball game this Sunday.
All right, Money. Fun to hear from Chris because he was a former Giant, but also, like you said, has a national show and knows the NFL pretty well.
Yeah, look, I think he was, I think that's the national perspective of the Chargers. I think, we tend to look at it through powder blue and gold shaded glasses because, we're around the guys, we're around the team, and we get a lot more excited about the positives than the negatives. But I would assume when you alternate wins and losses for 6 weeks, when you look at the general numbers overall as the 31st ranked run defense, you're going to be a little bit more skeptical. But I thought the one thing that you can take away from that is kind of what the theme of this particular installment of the podcast has been. And it's right there. It's right there for them to take. Huge win against the Bengals, dominate the Giants, and then you get to be the home team for once on a short week against the Chiefs to perhaps sweep that series and really take control of this division. And then we'll buy in. Everybody's wanted to buy in. They wanted to buy in at 4-1. They want to buy in when Herbert's winning AFC Offensive Player of the Week awards, week in and week out. But every time they do, there's that sort of 2 steps, 1 step. And it'd be nice to see them kind of get this thing rolling here.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're saying is that we need to see it too, right?
Sure.
We need to see it as well. But they are set up to beat the Giants Sunday and to have that showdown with the Chiefs. And if they are 9-5 at that point, I think it's time to start taking the Chargers a little more serious with the game against the Texans and a couple more division games. So it's right there. And I guess for wrapping this thing up, Money, just your keys to Sunday. It's a game that they should take care of, but what do you want to see specifically?
I want to see more turnovers. I think with Mike Glennon back there, with the leakage on that offensive line, I want to see the same kind of pressure that we saw against Mixon. I know that Chris talked about, the Giants have been able to force turnovers, interception in 8 straight, going back to last week it was snap. Tua took care of the football. So to me, it's defensively is what I'm looking for. That's a really good defense. And I said it and I keep saying it is a good defense. And, I think the Chargers need to play, a safe brand of football, let their defense shine in this one. And it should be able to, if, like I said, with Mike Glennon out there and that offensive line, and Saquon has been banged up all year, even though he's been healthy, he's still seemingly dinged up in every game. I'd really like to see a special defensive performance picking up where they left off last week against the Bengals.
Yeah, and it's funny. We spent all this time. We didn't really talk about Saquon. I don't think he has a 100-yard game this year. And,
he's still not right.
Chris mentioned it, though. Like, he's not fully sold on the Chargers' run defense. I thought that they played pretty well against Mixon.
I do, too. I would disagree with them. I think if you look at the numbers, that's the danger. And look, the guy's got to watch, 16 games. So I get it. You might not see everything. But, yes, they were up 24-0, but they were still trying to run the ball, and they were getting nothing. Yeah. That was the thing. Like I said, first down, second down, they're getting 1 yard, 2 yards. He'd rip off a 5, maybe every third carry or something. But their third down yardage was 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s. Like they were holding them pretty darn well. I thought the run defense played exceptional against Mixon when they tried to get something going there.
Yeah, when you see Mike Glennon under center, obviously, I think if the Giants are going to stay in this game, Saquon does have to have a big game, right? They had a control. They got to control clock, and it's got to be a Saquon Barkley game for the Giants to have a chance.
Yeah, no doubt. And he's just not shown the ability to be able to do that this season. So, maybe he just needs another year to get fully healthy off that injury. But, you would hate to see it. All the goodwill they've built up on this podcast from seemingly slowing down some really good backs. You would hate to see a Mike Glennon quarterback team able to do some damage against this Chargers defense because the run D wasn't quite fixed yet. And look, if Saquon's healthy, he's as good as there is. So, maybe it's just, I don't know what it's been the last, 12 games, but he just has not quite showed up yet.
Yeah. And Linval Joseph, Chris Canty,
former
teammate. Yeah, he comes back. So it's going to help. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. This was a fun one. Be sure to download and subscribe to the Chargers Podcast Network, wherever you listen to podcasts. Come say hi to me and Money if you're at the game at SoFi on Sunday. We'd love to see you. Until next time, I'm Chris Hayre.